I am Jane Hutanen. I'm a business leadership coach. I specialize in working with business leaders to uncover the hidden possibilities and unlock the freedom that's lurking in their business. Today, we're talking about change management at work. Not only is it the last of all the peer groups, it is obviously the last episode of Your Mind at Work Season 1. And whoever joined us last week has heard a little bit of a teaser from Pete about Season 2. I will be sharing that with everyone as well at the end. But last week, Pete talked about constant change. Pete talked about how feedback is a threat. And for those of you who've been coming to a lot of these sessions, you know that Pete and I have both talked, especially Pete, about how the brain perceives and reacts to both threat and rewards. That has definitely been a theme over this year. Pete shared some ways to help people give feedback, because, you know, if feedback is seen as a threat, how do you help people learn and grow and change? And part of it is making sure you're not threatening their status and helping them come up with the, figure out the feedback for themselves, because people can give themselves feedback. You just have to help them sometimes on the journey. Pete also talked about ways to encourage cultural change in an organization, talking about focus and how having them focus on some of the new and exciting things can help them. And he referred to the SCARF model, which has come up a few times. So that's the 35-second refresher of what Pete talked about last week. I'm going to launch a poll, and it's pretty simple. So, which of these reactions to change most resonates with you? Is it image 1, where he's looking kind of stressed and worried? Or is it image 2, where, you know, we've got, they're the two guys, they're cheering, they are excited, they are happy. And sometimes, you know, you might react a bit differently whether change is imposed on you or it is change that you have chosen to make. But in general, which of these resonates most?
Like lately?
That's actually a good point, Ryan. Okay.
Because I think it's almost, it depends. Like sometimes, yeah, super, we just scored huge, and then there's like head smashing things that we can't control. So I wish there was an option 3 where it's kind of like a headbang, but I'm good.
Well, and honestly, Ryan, last night at about 11 o'clock, I thought, you know, I should have had an option 3, because it is not black and white. What you see here is, you know, 100% of the people have chosen image 2, the excitement of the change and the embracing the change. The reality is, yeah, Stan?
Oh, no, go ahead. I'll make a comment when you're done.
Okay, I was going to say, yeah, the reality is in any change, there's going to be a little bit for pretty much everyone. There's going to be a little bit of each of the, you know, each of the emotions, right? Because change, any kind of change, is a threat to your safety, because people, you know, when you think about all the stuff Pete's talked about, people seek safety. And anytime something changes, there's the unknown. That can be a threat. You don't know 100% if the change is going to be ultimately going to be good or not good. And so even when you're excited, there can be some uncertainty. Stan, what were you going to share?
What occurs to me here is that there's an aspirational person that you would like to be. These are like at a cognitive level, these are the attributes that I like to ascribe to myself. And then there's the reality. And, you know, in addition to, you know, different change could be, you know, there's a hurricane coming and that's a change in the weather and that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, so you might be worried about it, but then there's opportunity, and that's the side on the, you know, the positive side where, you know, these individuals are embracing change, you know, and circumstances are going to determine which of these two characters you're going to be on the left or the right. But, you know, certainly you would hope that you have a certain degree of problem solving skill in your tool of capabilities, so that change wouldn't be as much of a threat and that it's an opportunity and that you could seek those. And how do you sharpen your knives and polish your ability so that when those changes occur, you could actually dive in and make the most of them as opposed to fearing them.
And the ability, the skill to deal with change and to figure out how to process yourself through change, it's a skill you can learn, right? You can get better at. Lori, you had your hand up. Oh, did we lose Lori?
No,
Okay.
I was just liking what Stan said, so I thought, no, just like you were saying, another thing I think about change, like we were saying, like when and what and whether it's imposed on you, but I think there's also like a threshold. Like some people can handle, like you get to a point where if the change is too big or too much,
mm-hmm.
Then somebody who can really embrace change might have enough. Or although sometimes you need to completely overhaul things, but I think the pandemic brought that up for a lot of people too, because it was a total change for some people, you know? Yeah, so there's sort of, you can be a great change hero and then reach your threshold where you are overwhelmed, you know?
I like that expression, change hero. That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down because.
What did I say?
Change hero. I think that's fantastic.
Change hero. Yeah.
Yeah, you can be a real change hero, right? And I know personally that even when it is a change that I am looking forward to, that I have chosen, for example, leaving the corporate world and starting my own business. Okay, I was 2.5 decades in corporate, starting my own business. I'd had that in my mind for pretty much, I don't know, at least 20 years. And it was like, the image 2, that's like, yeah, I'm really excited, but there was also a lot of image 1 playing with me because there's going to be the doubts of, oh, I'm leaving a really good corporate job and who knows what's going to happen. I might be out of business in 6 months. It might not be anything like what I expected it to be, even though I had talked to a lot of people and I had done research, etc. I still had some of both of those feelings. And for me, anytime there's any kind of change, I can find some of both of those emotions and, the whole spectrum. And the point, the be a change hero, as Lori, as you said, and Stan, about learning to have the skills and learning to deal with change, that can help you have more of the positive emotion as you approach change. But change, yeah.
So I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you mid-thought. Please go ahead.
No, please. No. I was about to move on. So please, Jason. Yeah.
I want to throw a slight monkey wrench into what we're talking about and suggest that we are a skewed audience because regardless of our view of change, for the most part, we are the one initiating it. We are in the driver's seat. We are the ones saying, I may or may not be comfortable with this change, but I'm making this change because I think it needs to happen. And it's very different when you're working in a large organization and change is being enforced upon you, and you may or may not have to say or input or appreciate what that change is, or even be threatened by it.
You've definitely struck on something that when there's large organizational change, for example, when that's being enforced, that is a much, much huger challenge than we can certainly address in the next 45 minutes, right? That's why, people take very long, in-depth courses in change management, become change management experts to manage that kind of change where you are enforcing change, where inherently that a lot of people are going to be more I'm nervous, I'm worried, am I going to lose my job? I don't like I don't like the change. I like how things are now. I don't like the way, the choices that have been made. And that is a much huger piece. Today, we're going to focus a bit more on when it's the chosen change, when it's something you're choosing to do. Because the principles there, you can also apply when change is being imposed on you. Okay. But it's, ways to help you deal with change. But you're right, Jason. It's, the group that's on the call here, we are people who lead change. That's the nature of the work that we do. And so being cognizant of what we're doing to other people when we're trying to change them, right? When we're trying to help them change, or we're imposing change on them. Being cognizant of some of the principles we'll be talking about today can help us to help them.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. This is great. This is why I love I love groups where everyone just contributes. So the thing with change, as Pete explained last week, change is perceived by the brain as a threat. Remember, things that happen, they might be seen as a threat. They might be seen as a reward. Change is an unknown. The brain is wired to think of it as a threat. So if you want to help people embrace change, whether it's helping yourself embrace a change you want to make or helping an organization, you need to help them shift to a reward response. And one of the ways is you create safety for them or create safety for yourself. Figuring out what the brain wants and how can you give the brain what it wants, because then it will see the reward and you will want to move towards the change. Mm-hmm. So today, as I said, we're going to focus more on personal or individual change, not the large organizational change. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thinking here is you have chosen to build a new skill. You may have been given some feedback. Hopefully it was in a way that Pete talked about last week, as opposed to the way that we often get it, which can be perceived as a threat. But you may have been given feedback, or you may have done some self-exploration and decided that you want to improve a certain skill. You want to improve your presentation skills, or you want to get better at networking, or you want to get better at time management, or you need to, figure out how to, there's some technical skill that, some app that you need to learn, or technical skill, or one of the many aspects of leadership, whatever it is, you are choosing to make a change, to learn a new skill, to behave differently. And we've all been around long enough that we have had to do this many, many times, I'm sure. So when you want to change, grow, develop, etc., how do you approach it?
Take a deep breath.
Yep.
I did that as a response to the question.
Taking a deep breath is good, because that helps the brain figure out, ooh, what am I going to say?
Well, personally, what I do, I literally plan everything. I map everything out if it's a change that I want. And I also was actually consciously doing something we talked about last week, but without realizing it, setting myself easy baby step tasks or interim milestones and goals, so that I knew I could achieve them and then move on to the next one, because it was like a little pat on the back, and it might only be a baby step, but 10 baby steps gets you to where you want to be, as opposed to 2 big strides. So I sort of psych myself up in those ways by just taking little chunks, and then when I'm done it, ooh, cool.
It feels good. And Pete, I'm sure you can explain how when you accomplish a goal, what happens to your brain? Does it release some chemicals?
Dopamine kicks in. We all get very excited. It's a wonderful rush.
Yep.
We've achieved something. Why did the chicken cross the road? Because it wanted a dopamine rush. It actually achieved something, getting to the other side.
Yep. Yeah. Ryan, you have your hand up. Oh, and then Ryan and then Stan. Sorry, I saw Ryan first. Yeah.
I guess for myself, sometimes you just sometimes things aren't planned, and you have to kind of, dive in head first and kind of, go through the murky waters or whatever comes your way. For me, it's kind of always been, sometimes you're just forced to do stuff, and you just have to go with the flow, and you learn as you go. And sometimes there's time constraints, and sometimes things aren't as perfect. But for me, it's been kind of, you gotta just dive in sometimes.
Exactly. Good. Thank you, Stan.
The reason that you plan, by the way, Ryan, to your point, is because it creates certainty, or at least a degree of certainty.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel that you've got certainty and you're in control, they're components of the SCARF model that we talked about. But what will happen is when you have to think on your feet, like some of our techs do here at Next Dimension, they're presented with a gazillion different problems over the course of a year, and they never know when the phone rings what the problem's going to be today, and they've got to think on their feet and figure things out. But when they do, they have an adrenaline and a dopamine rush because their status rises because, hey, I've just fixed it.
Yeah, I think the reward is different. I think it's I don't know it might be like a longer drawn out like dopamine rush. I feel like sometimes it's a little bit different because of amount of pressure. If it's right on the spot, and then it's like a huge tension release versus kind of navigating, like you said, the baby steps. So it's probably two different rewards.
It is, but the end result is when you achieve it, you'll get the dopamine rush and reward because you'll be patting yourself on the back effectively.
Yeah,
exactly. Stan, you had your hand up.
I think I could unify some of these different themes together with a couple of examples. But one, I think to a certain extent, some people have a bias toward action versus analysis, and I tend to be a person with a bias toward overanalyzing things and then, measure twice, cut once, where my brother is much more of a bias toward action, jump in and get things done. And I respect that. And going back to what I said before, there's the aspirational kind of perspective where I'd like to be that person who is, biased toward, jumping in, taking control, acting right away. But what I tend to do, and this is where I meant about unifying it, I tend to be, measure, falling back to that safety or comfort zone, which is even in change, I want to analyze, I'll look and research and plan and create, steps. So an example I have is a change that I had to make for surgery. I was told I had to lose 15 pounds. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to get any immediate feedback from, working out and dieting. So I created like a calendar, and like for every day that I followed my routine, I gave myself a quarter of a pound of weight loss, just, so that I could see the progress on my calendar. And that was my baby steps toward the goal. And then ultimately I figured that I would, get some actual feedback. And that was my change management approach, so even in change, you could find comfort in finding those little routines or habits that allow you to get past the immediate, toward the bigger goal.
Exactly. And you mentioned, bias toward action versus bias toward analysis. There's research in terms of what motivates people. And so the bias toward analysis is what's called an intellectual motivator. You want all the knowledge, all the information, and you need that before you can take steps. Bias toward action would be what's called an instinctive motivator. You're motivated by, this is my gut. I've got a little bit of data. My gut's telling me, let's just go do this, right? And depending on where you are on the spectrum and what motivates you, you're going to react to change differently, and you're going to need to take different steps to help you work through the change. And weight loss is a great example of how do you do that. So those little goals, give yourself the check marks. That works. Lori.
I'm unmuted already. I guess I'm more like Stan, because I was going to say, like, when I saw the word exercise and I was thinking of weight management rather than like loss, I heard something. I was thinking of education. I was also not just the steps, but what do you need to know? Who should you talk to? Like, it's almost like I do take some time to think. I have some things around me. And then the thing about the weight management, I heard, which is different. I heard a doctor once say that it's a chronic obesity is a chronic illness, and you treat a chronic problem different than you treat something you fix today, right? And a part of that is the element of education and things like that. So like maybe that is the analysis or the bias to an intellectual motivator, but it's like I want to turn it around 20 times and then, maybe talk to people about it and things like that, not just always jump into finding the steps,
And there is, you also, either consciously or subconsciously, your brain is evaluating the level of risk of jumping in versus getting all of the information, all the data. So, Stan, even though you like to have all the data, if something is super low risk, you're probably a little more comfortable with just going with it versus, okay, this is super phenomenal high risk. And you've got the spreadsheets and or you may have the spreadsheets and you have the full analysis, right? And so the degree, the scope of the change is also important. What can get in the way, even when you've said, I want to make this change, whether it's I want to lose 15 pounds or I want to be a better public speaker, or I want to build better relationships with my team. What can get in the way of making that change?
Fear of failure.
Fear of failure. Yeah.
Other people sometimes. Like, so your community, or like people who don't want you to change.
Yeah.
I think if you have some context around what the scope of the change is and what the general direction, you may have more confidence wading into something, compared to something that is a complete unknown. Just as an example, I was traveling yesterday in Florida, and I had a general idea of the direction that I wanted to go, and I was more willing to just here and there in order to get to the goal, whereas my wife didn't know east from west and so on, and she really wanted to see the map in order to see where we're going. And I said, all we have to do is just go in this direction and we'll be fine. I had context and she didn't have context, so sometimes a lack of context could get in the way of embracing a change because it's really too uncertain. And if you have a degree of certainty around the change, that gives you a little bit more confidence to plunge in and pursue it.
Yeah. And so degree of certainty links back to the safety. And when you feel safe, and that's another of the themes that Pete especially has talked a lot about in terms when he's talking about how the brain works, safety. So Stan, you felt safe knowing that, okay, we have to go in this general direction, and your wife wasn't feeling safe because she had no clue.
Yeah.
Right. She didn't have enough context and information. Yeah, change is hard, and there are a lot of things that can get in the way. There's a piece that the current behavior serves you, or it has in the past. So whether it's a bad habit or a habit that used to be a good habit but now needs to be changed, or certain behavior styles, certain the way you act, certain amount of knowledge or information that you have, it has served you. Right. And so, I like chocolate. So eating chocolate serves me because eating chocolate makes me happy. Okay. Eating chocolate does not help me if I want to lose weight and have a healthier diet, but it is serving me in one way. So you need to figure out, what can I replace that with? What is going to meet that same need as I move on the journey to change? It is risky. First thing Kelly said, well, you might fail, right? And when you're trying something new, you probably will the first few times. If you're trying a new skill, and public speaking is a great example. Very few people are naturally wonderful at public speaking. It is a skill you learn through practice and through getting coaching and, videotaping yourself and watching yourself and counting the number of times you say, and going, oh, I didn't know I said it that often, right? You get better, but the first times you are going to fail. And when, 1 second, Stan, before I lose my thought, sorry. when I'm trying something new with a client or in my corporate job, if I was trying something new with my team, I would often tell them, I'm trying something new. I'm probably not going to get it right the first few times. Please let me know how it goes so that I can get better at it. But so that they don't just think, what the heck is Jane doing? Like, where did this come from? that was bad, so that they know I'm on my learning journey and I'm trying to grow and change and improve at something, and they can be supportive of that. Sorry, Stan, and then Jason.
I kind of wanted to go back to something Jason said before, at least interpretation. I think we're initiating change. Inertia is kind of like the enemy, where we're the ones who are basically saying, there's something that I want to accomplish, but if you're comfortable in your particular status quo, you may not initiate the change, and then that kind of need or recognition of the opportunity or the payoff from the change may not be that present. So you may need to have either some externality that's introducing the need for the change, and you may want to construct that, kind of relationship with an external party in order to, give you the motivation to change the status quo. But those are the kind of things. Is the reward significant enough that you recognize that there's a change that's needed that gets you off of your butt to do something? Or, do you just respond, to impulses that are driven from the outside? So those are couple of things
and linked to the the health example of losing weight, eating better. When someone has a health scare, they suddenly figure out, many people, not all of them, but they suddenly figure out, oh yeah, I need to lose weight, or I need to eat better, and they can change those habits pretty quickly when the motivation is big enough. Stan, you were able to lose the 15 pounds because you had to have whatever surgery, right? Like you needed to do that, and you presumably could see it's like, okay, once I get through the surgery, I'm going to be in a better place and I need to do this. So there would be some motivation there. Jason.
Yeah, two quick things is number one, based on what was just said. I came across a stat, and I was going to ask everyone to guess, but just in interest of time, I'll just share with you. It kind of blew me away. Is they compiled stats of people who have been confronted by cardiologists and said, if you do not make drastic life changes, you will die within 12 months.
Okay.
And 86% of people were not able to do that.
Whoa.
Which I found astounding. The thing I want to get back to, though, is the whole, and I think it's important to talk about, is the concept of failure. I'm a bit of a word geek, and in the English language, and matter of fact, a lot of other languages, areas around failure and stuff like that have actually a different meaning. Like, for example, we say to err is human, or when we did a transgression. The literal origin of those words, like to err, means to wander, right? And there's other languages that have a similar concept. It's not that you failed utterly, but you missed the mark. You didn't hit the bullseye, but you're somewhere on the board. And I think it's important to understand that, like, if you chart your progress of any change, you're never going to, just climb to that plateau and go straight across, whether it's weight loss or anything. And it's very easy to look at that as quote unquote failure, when it really is progress, and you haven't gotten where you want to. But I think that's what keeps you going, is understanding that you're progressing towards where you want to be. And like you said, several different ways, you're going to fail, quote, in air quotes, along the way, and you have to embrace that. It's not bad. It's just part of life.
Exactly. It's part of life. And learning from your failures, right? Learning from the mistakes, learning your way through that growth, and the fact that it is uncomfortable, right? If you're not, I'm sure we've all heard, so if you're not pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, you are not going to learn and grow. Lori.
Well, first, I was going to talk about the behavior, but first, one of my sayings I tell myself is, all those who wander are not lost.
Nice. Yeah.
But so I like that, Jason. Yeah. But I listened recently to a podcast with Mel Robbins, with an expert on teenage mental health, and it was really good. And she said, had a different look at like some of our bad habits because they're coping mechanisms. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of we wouldn't do our bad habits if they didn't serve us. Like, that's what she's saying. It's just that if in the moment, they serve us in the moment, which I guess is the whole brain thing, because the brain is also very now, So it's just that if what we're doing in the moment is going to hurt us in the future or the long run, then we need a different coping mechanism or to change it or deal with it. But it was an interesting, so even the current behavior served us in the past, but it also might serve us in the present. but not service in the future.
Not service. Yeah. Not help us accomplish the goal. Yeah. Thank you, Kelly.
I think sometimes too, when there's something that's going to change, I look at it as how big of an impact could it or would it have? So, you know what? Okay, maybe you're learning to public speak. It's not going to be so bad if you have to get up and speak, in front of 20 people and you stumble and you stutter or something. It's not going to have a tremendous impact. It could. I will give an example. I think a lot of I have a music background, and one of the classes that we had to take was a vocal class. Somehow, I am a trumpet player. I ended up in a class with all vocal majors, and I had to get up and sing. And that was terrifying. That was terrifying. And I can sing, but I was made where I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't even sing. Mary had a little lamb in front of them. But it took a lot to get up there and change that will to be up. But if it's something that you're implementing a change within an organization or something that could have a real drastic impact, I think that's where the fear and the thought process and that whole analysis goes through a lot differently. And I think that's where it makes things much harder to do. You fear, okay, could this bring the company down? Could this make all my employees quit? Could this whatever it has? So, could I lose all my customers? So it has a different impact when you're trying to implement some of these changes when you're not sure exactly of the outcome.
And then you also need to look at, yes, but I could get twice as many customers. I could increase the loyalty of my current employees and attract more employees, so that to help you get through the change, it's thinking about all of the positives that come.
And sorry, Jane, and I like that. Yes, but, and that's something to think of. And funny enough, in my theater training, that is one thing that when you do improv, you are always supposed to do the yes, but, and never a no. Yes, and.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's yes and rather than no but.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Because that gets the brain, it's a language thing, right? It gets the brain's like, oh, I have to fill in the gap of what else. So if you're going through personal change, you've chosen some change, you've chosen to embrace change that's imposed on you, or you're choosing to make a change yourself. There are some six steps. Change one thing at a time, identify why you want to change, understand how it serves you. We've talked a bit about that. Sit with the discomfort, take baby steps, and no time limits. So the first one, change only one thing at a time. Especially if there's something that is going to have a big impact, your brain cannot work on two things at once. Okay. So you want to focus on one skill, one habit, think about what's going to have the greatest impact to help you accomplish the goals, and work on just that one and get it entrenched and get comfortable with it before you say, okay, now I need to go to the next skill, the next thing, right? It's really easy for people to say, oh, I need to fix this and this and this and this and this. It's like, none of them will happen. So just pick one at a time, the one that you feel you can make the most progress on and that will have the greatest impact. Identify why you want to change. So spend some time to figure out the deep why. So what will be different as a result of the change? Will you get the job you want, get promoted? Are you going to make more money? Will you have more time off because there's better work-life balance? Will you be more fulfilled? Will you be healthier and live longer, which will allow you to spend more time with children, grandchildren, theoretical or whatever, right? Like family, friends. What is it that this change is going to allow you to do and achieve and accomplish? And is that something you really, really want enough to go through the work to make the change? So I know I've had times where I've said, oh yeah, I'd like to do that. And that's going to require me to change habits, to change what I'm doing, how I'm doing, learn new skills. And I keep finding I'm not taking the effort to do that. And when I think about it, it's like, that wasn't maybe my goal. Maybe that was someone else's goal. Maybe that's what society says I should want, but I don't really want it. So if I don't really want it, I'm not going to do the work to go to accomplish that. And keeping that why in mind is important when the going gets tough, because it will. And when you've been told to build a skill or develop in some way, or something's been imposed on you, if you don't see the point, if you can't find a positive reason, like something that's going to serve you, back to Pete's threat versus reward. If you can't find some reward in that change, it's going to be really, really hard, if not impossible, for you to do that. Stan put in the chat, getting there. All of these state transfers are done.
Sorry, I meant to respond to Ryan, but
okay, sorry. I was going to say this isn't making sense. Okay, how does this fit? Okay, sorry.
Well, this is a change that's been foisted on me. My mom passed away, and my brother and I inherited my mom's condominium in Florida. So I'm dealing with the change of all the tradespeople and working with headache upon headache. It's time consuming. So what this is saying is it's also sort of fun at the same time, because this is something that I certainly didn't choose to do. But it's one of life's little curveballs that got thrown at me, and now I'm dealing with it, and it's actually kind of enjoyable in a way. And just to jump in on what I think you were saying before, sometimes you don't know what the end goal is going to be, and the change is not something where there's a path that's drawn out. I have an example, and it's a big corporate kind of change, but I worked for a company that was a semiconductor company, and there was an earthquake. This is before I joined, but I heard this tale, and my boss, who was kind of like a low-level middle manager, took the bull by the horns and dealt with this earthquake situation in Taiwan, where there was a lot of uncertainty and people, not really knowing what to do. And he kind of led the change because he had this kind of aptitude of dealing with change and embracing it, and it wound up serving his career really well. He wound up, ascending in the organization because people recognized him as a capable person who was able to deal with uncertainties in an effective manner. And I always remember that as kind of one of the things in the back of my mind when change is thrust upon you. There's a lot of times the opportunity, to deal with that winds up being really constructive for your career or for your personal well-being. And running toward the change as opposed to running away from it can really serve you well.
That's a good point. You cannot always predict the outcome, but if you can find a kernel to motivate you, you need to find something in there. So in this example you gave, Stan, he was doing the right thing, right? He knew he needed to deal with this crisis. He knew that he needed to take care of people and do the things. And presumably he felt good dealing with that and working through the change. And so he would have had some kind of motivation, and then it paid out, in ways that he could not have predicted. And so, yeah, you need to then be open to what you can learn and how you can continue to grow. But keeping the why in mind, and it may become bigger, it may change over time as you go through the change, but keeping that in mind can keep you going when it's like, oh, I don't want to do 10 more push-ups, but if I do them, it's contributing to my health goal.
If I could just respond to your comment there. I didn't mean to discount what you were saying. I think sometimes the change and being acknowledging that addressing change effectively is a goal in and of itself, and therefore you may not know the outcome, but recognizing that dealing with change could be effective can be a motivator, or at least you can add that to the other advantages that you may or may not be able to see, and just recognize that is something additional that you could focus on as a positive from the change. Yeah,
and that's a really good point, Stan. Yeah. So thank you. Okay. Number 3, we did talk a little bit about this already, understanding how the current behavior serves you. So you're doing things in a certain way for a reason. It has worked for you in the past. You enjoy it, right? It is easy. It has been successful in helping you accomplish your goals in the past. It just may not be helping you accomplish your goals or your true goals anymore, or may not be helping you as much as a new behavior or a new skill might. So thinking about how to, how to shift from, one example is social media. Someone spends too much time on social media. Well, what are you getting? You're getting those likes. That's releasing dopamine in your brain, right? You put a post on Facebook or LinkedIn or something, and people like it and comment. That's why social media is so addictive. They know how to do this, right? You get engaged and you can get sucked in. So recognizing that is what is happening, and I'm not saying that you would then cut social media out, but how do you control the social media, and how do you get that dopamine hit somewhere else? Maybe it's face-to-face interactions with people, and maybe that'll actually make you feel better than seeing likes on social media. And so when you think about the new behavior, the new skill, if there's a way to link a trigger to the old behavior to remind you, and I'm not explaining this very well, but to remind you to do the new thing. And in social media, if you set an alarm and then it's like, oh, when the alarm goes off, I've been on Facebook for 10 minutes, the alarm goes off, that means I should reach out live and in person. This is the change I want to make. If this is what I've chosen, it means I'm going to reach out live and in person, and I'm going to call a friend on the phone, see if they have time to chat for 5 minutes. So linking the new behavior to an old behavior, and I'm summarizing a lot of habit change theory here, can help you shift to do more of the new behavior, because it triggers in your brain the shift and it helps you to learn that. You're going to be uncomfortable anytime you do something new. You're going to be uncomfortable. So learn to be comfortable with the discomfort and push those boundaries and go outside of your comfort zone. My example here, I'm quite extreme on the introverted side. So I do not like talking to strangers. I really find it hard when I meet new people to be comfortable having a conversation with them. But when you start a business, you gotta talk to a lot of people you don't know, right? You're doing that all the time. I go to networking, generally once or twice a week. And at networking, I'm talking to people I've never met before. So I had to learn how to do it reasonably effectively, get somewhat comfortable. I still don't love it, but I can do it. And when I tell people that I don't like talking to strangers, they go, really? It's like, yeah, I don't like meeting new people. It's like, I couldn't tell. So I've learned I've learned strategies and tactics so that I can do it. Still don't love it, but I can do it. Exposure therapy. Yeah. So Lori mentions exposure therapy, where you get exposure to the thing in just little tiny bits. And as you get more and more comfortable. So, if you're afraid of heights, you go up one step on the ladder, and that's all. And you do that for a period of time. And then you go up 2 steps. And when you're comfortable with 2 steps, you then go 3 steps. And eventually, maybe you're doing the thing at the CN Tower where you lean over the edge. But it's doing it, and just a little bit. It's to Pete's thing. It's like 10 small steps versus 2 huge steps. You're never going to do the 2 huge steps. Step 5 is taking the baby steps. Okay. So the small steps accumulate the change over time. You're not going to lose 10 pounds in 1 week, but you can lose half a pound a week, or whatever the science is, and what you're doing. And that over time adds up to bigger change. And so when you're overwhelmed by the scope of the change, just think about, well, what's the little tiny piece I can do first? And then what's the little piece after that? And no time limits. this one's a little problematic because quite often, we need results now, or there are time limits imposed on us for when we need to make a change, imposed on us, or we might impose on ourselves. So we may say, I want to get promoted within a year. And in order to do that, I need to develop certain new skills over 6 months. So I then have, 3 to 6 months to demonstrate them so that I'm in the hopper to get promoted. But change happens slowly, learning new skills, getting comfortable. It takes time. So if you go too fast, you're going to be disappointed. So Stan, if you'd said, I'm going to lose 15 pounds in 1 week, there's no way, right? It's impossible. You needed to do, so like a 3/4 of a pound, you needed to do it. And it needed to take a certain amount of time. It takes time for the brain to form the new neurons and create the new behavior patterns, etc., in order for you to implement and have that change be sustainable. So give yourself some time, give yourself a chance, give yourself, the grace to say, oh, it links back to you're going to fail occasionally. What can I learn from that failure? And how can I move forward? Jason.
Yeah, I love this. I love these 6 steps. And at the same time, I really personally have issue with number 6.
Yeah, it's a controversial one. Yeah, that's why it's there. To guys get discussion. You're good.
Yeah, I think maybe realistic time limits, but I mean, there's goals that we call SMART goals, and the T of SMART is time bound, right?
Yeah.
So, and I've just, quite frankly, I'm probably guilty of it myself. I've met so many people that have been talking about doing something for 20 years, but haven't taken a step.
Yeah.
And so it does not resonate with me, this one. The other ones really do, and I really appreciate it, but I'm really going to give you a pushback on this one, because without time limits, you're just going to have inertia.
And so my pushback on your pushback
awesome.
And Jason, I agree. This one, I mean, and this is from, these are resources. These are not something I made up myself, right?
Yeah.
If the why is there, then you will continue to make progress if you continue to remind yourself your why. So if someone is saying they want to do something for 20 years and they never do it, I would propose with a high degree of certainty they don't actually really want to do that thing. It's not really that important to you. It's way low down on their list, and there are a lot of other things that are more important to them. Because if they really wanted to do it, they would start to find a way. So this one is I also read, it's like, no time limits, but I put it out there for discussion because I think it's like no hard and fast time limits, maybe, or there's no real, you want realistic time limits.
I'm not sure I actually understand
what Pete is saying, and what you talk about baby steps is it's okay. You're not going to lose 15 pounds in a week.
Yeah,
but it's realistic that you lose, 1/4 of a pound a week or half a pound or whatever, depending on your, your actions, your body. And I'll just inject something in there, and I'll step back as I hear other people make comments. I think one thing that is important to mention as well is acceptance of delayed gratification. No matter what you're going to want to do, it is going to be easier not to change and be in the present. Whether it's education or weight loss, whatever it is, you're going to have to accept the fact, to your point about discomfort, that you're going to have to sacrifice certain things in order to achieve that goal you want. And in the end, you'll probably be happier, but in the short term, you're not. And you just have to accept that.
Yeah. I and the word sacrifice is, I think, an important one, because any change, it does require you to sacrifice something, right? Yeah. If I want to lose weight, I shouldn't be eating 2 ice cream cones a day. Right? Lori?
I think actually, if you look at the whole progress, I would qualify it like maybe I'm working with the no time limits idea. But I think you can put time limits on the baby steps, but you're not putting a time limit on the overall change. And for me, part of it too is for the change to be sustainable. Is there a time limit? Like it's for like in the idea that yeah, like that if you wanted to change it forever, you might fall down at different times.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a hard one because we like to contain things, but it is more, can we contain the small thing?
Yeah. So this is great because it's like this one I also struggled a little bit with. Wasn't totally comfortable, but this is why we have these great discussions. We are almost out of time. I just want to say these steps also apply.
There's no limit though.
Jason.
Sorry.
There's a limit to this meeting.
Okay. Fine.
Last week,
the baby step, right?
This is the big last week. So anyway, we can have more discussion in a minute. I just want to make sure we know. Last week, Pete shared the plan for season 2 of Your Mind at Work, the professional jigsaw, where we're going to talk about cultural aspects of basically how can you be be professional in today's world. There are cultural aspects, there are skills aspects. This will be getting all up on the website soon. You'll be able to learn more, and you'll get the slides after this at some point, and you can read more about it. But we've got a great plan for next year already. And now, for those of you who have been coming to Pete's sessions, my sessions, you will be getting. It's not going to look like this. I don't know what Kelly's going to create, but you'll be getting a Your Mind at Work certificate of completion. I don't know what we're calling it to say that you have gone through all of this. Hopefully you've learned something. And that will happen sometime whenever Kelly gets it done in the summer.